Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a crooked alleyway in Prague, where cold mist clings to centuries-old stones and something ancient waits above your head. Tick, tick, tick. You look up, and there it is, not just a clock, but a galaxy carved in gold, spinning right on the wall of a medieval town hall. The kind of thing that whispers, "You're a speck, buddy, but at least you're a punctual one." We're talking about the Prague astronomical clock, a machine older than chocolate in Europe, older than the printing press, older than your great-great-great-grandma's dental plan. And yet, this medieval wonder somehow predicts celestial events even today. You might be thinking, cool, but I can just check my phone. Sure, but can your phone survive fires, revolutions, and a few centuries of pigeon poop? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Let's see how many time zones we can light up together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start in Old Town Square, the heart of Prague. Cobblestones under your feet, echoing with centuries of footsteps. Tourists swarm by day, but right now, it's almost midnight, quiet, almost reverent, and there, clinging to the southern wall of the old town hall like a mechanical barnacle from the Renaissance, is the horloge. Built in 1410, it's the third oldest astronomical clock in the world, and the oldest still working. The thing is part timepiece, part astrological chart, part medieval art project, and part haunted-looking statue gallery. Every hour, wooden saints slide past tiny windows like actors on cue. A skeleton, yes, really rings a bell to remind you that death is very much keeping time. It's all weirdly charming, a little unsettling, and completely mesmerizing. You press closer and squint at the face of the clock. It's a riot of gold lines, concentric circles, suns, moons, and strange letters. You feel like you're looking at some kind of steampunk star map. And in a way, you are. This clock wasn't just built to tell the hour, it was built to reflect the heavens. When it chimes, it's not just measuring Earth time. It's tracking celestial cycles, zodiac positions, and moon phases. It's like someone took the universe, shrunk it, and bolted it to a wall. But how did this thing come to be? Why did anyone even want to build it in the first place? You'd think medieval Prague had more pressing concerns, plagues, for one, or soup shortages. But back then, time was everything. Trade routes depended on it. Religious rituals timed their prayers to the hour, and monarchs, oh boy, loved anything that showed off their wealth, power, and divine favor. What better flex than a machine that tracked the stars? Still, but there's something deeper here. Standing beneath the horloge, you can feel it, that old ancient ache to understand the cosmos, not just to survive in the world, but to name it, map it, maybe even predict it. You know that feeling, the one that hits when you stare at the night sky too long and start to feel floaty and small and kind of electric. That's what this clock is. Not just gears and hands, but a time capsule of human wonder. The man most often credited with the horloge's creation is Mikuláš of Kádin. a clockmaker whose full biography could fit on a post-it note. He worked alongside Jan Schindel, a professor of mathematics and astronomy at Charles University. Schindel was the real star chart guy, a kind of medieval Neil deGrasse Tyson with a long robe and worse hygiene. Historians still argue whether the clock's most famous legends, like the one where the city blinds the creator to keep him from replicating it, are true, charming, if wildly unethical, the kind of story you'd expect from a town that also believes golems once stomped through its streets. But here's a quirkier detail: the horloge wasn't just telling time. It was designed to mark religious festivals, agricultural seasons, and even predict eclipses. Think of it as the world's oldest multi-purpose app. If your apps were made of brass and took 100 years to calibrate, a clock like this wasn't cheap, and Prague wasn't some sleepy backwater. It was a glittering hub of the Holy Roman Empire. Kings lived here, alchemists experimented in its towers, and below the surface a boiling soup of ideas, power plays, and superstition. This wasn't just a science project, it was a political statement, a religious symbol, a cosmic dare. You notice the way the clock glints in the moonlight, a soft golden shimmer across its intricate face. The cool metal has been touched by snow, soot, sunlight, and centuries of hands curious, reverent, sometimes greasy from festival sausages. You can almost hear the creak of the old gears inside, some of them still original. Just think these same cogs once turned when Christopher Columbus was still bugging Spain for a boat loan. And right now the clock's still ticking, still charting the heavens, still swinging its moon phase dial and calculating celestial alignments with eerie precision. It's like a medieval oracle in slow motion. You half expect it to whisper secrets. But don't get too cozy, because while this machine is stunning, it's only the beginning. You're about to travel backward and forward in time, following not just this clock, but the very idea of measuring time itself. It's a story of obsession, genius, betrayal, astronomy, and a little bit of magic. And it all begins, really begins, long before the clock was even dreamed of. You step away from the horloge's shadow and drift further back in time past the 1400s, past the medieval tinkering, all the way to when clocks weren't even clocks. Just imagine waking up each day not to an alarm, but to the warmth of sunlight creeping across your cave wall or the crow of a particularly smug rooster. No numbers, no minutes, just vibes. Before timekeeping had gears and bells, it had shadows. You probably would have used a sundial if you were fancy, or a stick in the dirt. If you weren't, you'd watch the shadow move and guess how much daylight was left. Accurate me, but it worked until clouds rolled in, or winter, or the whole night. So you get creative. The ancient Egyptians used clepsydras, water clocks that drip time away like a leaking faucet. In China, they have incense clocks scented time, essentially, and candle clocks that burn down hour by hour. You picture someone lighting one at dusk and thinking, cool, bedtime's in 4 inches. Every culture finds a way to track time. The Mayans, for instance, basically built math-heavy calendars that predicted solar eclipses centuries in advance. Over in Babylon, astrologers chart the movements of planets like it's cosmic Sudoku. And somewhere in Greece, a guy named Ptolemy is sketching planetary epicycles, while everyone else is probably still just trying to count to 30. But here's the rub, none of it's super portable. Water clocks don't travel well, shadows depend on weather, and try lighting a candle on a ship without burning your beard off. So the race begins. Humans want to tame time, make it reliable, mechanical, consistent, especially as cities grow and life gets busier. Markets need schedules, prayers need bells, and kings want things to be on time, especially executions. They're very particular about those. Monasteries step in. Monks become the accidental time nerds of medieval Europe. They're the ones who need to know when to pray, when to chant, when to eat. So they start developing the first mechanical clocks, giant iron monsters that strike bells and use weights to keep things moving. You don't carry these in your pocket. You strap them to cathedral towers and hope they don't collapse the roof. Picture one of these early clocks. Huge gears, rusty chains, weights that look like cannonballs. The ticking's more like a thud. You hear it echoing through stone corridors, almost like a heartbeat of civilization, really. One that doesn't need sunlight or perfect weather, just gravity and grit. One historical standout, the clock at Salisbury Cathedral in England, built around 1386. No face, no hands, just chimes, and it's still working today. The thing predates the printing press and still outlives most printers. Historians still argue whether it was the first mechanical clock or just the first one anyone wrote down, but either way, it's older than your weekend plans and probably more reliable. You might be wondering, why did all these clocks end up in towers? Simple visibility. You stick a bell up high, ring it, and everyone in earshot knows it's time to do something. Work, pray, panic, whatever the day demands. Time becomes communal, not yours or mine, but ours. A shared rhythm. But here's a little known twist. Most people didn't actually live by the hour. Not yet. A peasant in the fields didn't care if it was 3:45, just whether there was still light to finish the plowing. Townsfolk might know when noon hit because the bell rang, but they didn't own watches or worry about running late for brunch. Time was flexible, more when the sun's about here and less I'll be there at exactly 7:10. Still, as cities grew, so did the need for precision and competition. Cities wanted the best clock, the most complex clock, the look how advanced we are clock. Enter stage left Prague, proud, powerful, and ready to make a statement. Now, keep in mind, the average person back then didn't understand astronomy. Most folks thought the Earth was the center of everything, and that stars were just holes poked in the sky dome by curious angels. But the intellectual elite, they were hungry for more. They pored over Greek and Arabic manuscripts, rediscovered math, argued about planetary orbits, and slowly, the concept of measuring time based on celestial movement began to crystallize. Imagine being one of those early thinkers, hunched over parchment, candle wax dripping on your robe, tracing the paths of stars with a quill. No telescopes yet, just sharp eyes and sharper minds. Every observation took weeks. Every chart was a guess wrapped in a prayer, but it mattered, not just for curiosity's sake, but for power. If you could predict the skies, you could predict tides, harvests, eclipses, even omens. Knowing when the moon would disappear wasn't just science, it was political gold and religious dynamite. Here's a fringe detail some medieval scholars believed time was alive. Not metaphorically, literally alive. A divine, ticking force that could breathe, sigh, even get sick. One philosopher called it the blood of the cosmos. A little dramatic? Maybe, but poetic. Makes your Apple Watch feel pretty soulless in comparison, doesn't it? Eventually, all these experiments and philosophies began to coalesce into actual machines. You can almost hear the first proto-clock sputtering to life iron teeth, clicking into motion. A bell ringing awkwardly. People would have gathered to watch, jaws slack, wondering if it was magic or witchcraft or both. And yet, even as these inventions spread, they stayed deeply rooted in the heavens. Early clockmakers didn't just want to measure hours. They wanted to mirror the universe. The ticking gears weren't just mechanical, they were metaphysical. Every swing of the pendulum, every turning wheel, was meant to echo the grand design above. You start to see it now, don't you? The horloge wasn't an anomaly. It was an evolution, the next logical step in a very illogical, deeply human obsession to make the abstract visible, to turn the cosmos into a clock, to pin eternity to the wall. But building something like that, well, that's a story in itself. And not everyone involved would live to see the final bell. So here you are in Prague, 1410. The city buzzes with ambition. Merchants bark out prices in the marketplace. And the castle on the hill watches everything below like a stone sentinel. Horses clop through narrow alleys. The smell of bread, coal smoke, and something vaguely medieval, probably not pleasant, wafts in the air. You're standing on the edge of genius and madness, about to witness the birth of something almost impossible, a machine that tells the time, the date, the position of the stars, the phase of the moon, and even, in its own weird way, your place in the universe. No pressure. At the heart of this creation is Mikuláš of Kaidan, a clockmaker with more grease under his fingernails than sleep in his eyes. He's been commissioned by the city council part science project, part municipal flex. But Mikuláš can't do it alone. He partners with Jan Schindel, a university professor, astronomer, and priest who spent way too many nights staring at the sky and muttering Latin curses when the clouds roll in. Schindel is the brains behind the celestial mechanics. He's the one sketching out the sky on parchment, drawing careful arcs to track the sun and moon. He's also the guy you'd call if you needed someone to explain why Mercury is in retrograde, or if you wanted to fall asleep halfway through dinner. Together, these two set out to build what's now called the horloge, but at the time, it's just the astronomical clock, a technical term that roughly translates to, please don't break this. It took years, and here's the juicy bit historians still argue whether Mikuláš really built it all. Some say there was a third figure, Master Hanuš, who may have come in later to repair or reinvent the thing around 1490. That's where the legend gets spicy. According to one chilling tale, Master Hanuš made the clock so beautifully, so flawlessly, that the Prague City Council panicked. What if he builds another one, they whispered, like jealous exes. Their solution? They blinded him, permanently, which, just to be clear, is not how you should thank your engineer. Allegedly, in his despair, Hanuš broke into the clock's workings and jammed it, ensuring no one else would understand it. Quirky tale, yes. Verified. Not really, but it's been around for centuries. And you know how cities love their legends. And if it didn't happen, well, it should have, because it's deliciously tragic. Now, step inside the workshop. Imagine it dusty tables piled high with metal shavings, gears the size of dinner plates, and parchment covered in scribbles that look more like sorcery than science. You smell hot iron and old wood. You hear the clink of tools, the groan of winches, the soft mumble of prayers and swears. This isn't just engineering, it's alchemy with a deadline, and it takes years. Years of trial and error, of misaligned gears and slipped weights and weight. Where did that moon phase dial go? You picture Mikulash sighing, wiping his brow, and trying to explain to a very impatient councilman why the astrolabe is currently upside down. But eventually, it works. The horloge comes alive. It's not just a single clock face, it's a triple threat. The astronomical dial, showing the sun and moon's positions in the sky, including lunar phases and zodiac signs. The calendar dial, added later, which tracks the days of the year and liturgical festivals. The Apostles' Walk, where wooden figures of the 12 apostles parade out every hour, like a celestial puppet show with biblical flair. And then there's death, a skeleton figure who rings a bell to remind you, quite cheerfully, that your time is limited. It's charming, morbid, and very on brand for medieval Europe. You watch the clock chime for the first time, gears grind to life. A tiny window opens, apostles shuffle past, a rooster crows, a skeleton nods. It's a bizarre, beautiful circus of symbolism and mechanics. People in the square gasp. Children tug on their mother's cloaks. A man crosses himself, because this isn't just technology, it's theater, theology, art. It's a performance that happens every hour, rain or shine, for centuries. And what's more, it's not just telling time, it's telling the kind of time medieval people actually cared about. Back then, hours weren't uniform. Italian hours counted from sunset, Bohemian time from sunrise. Some clocks even had unequal hours shorter in winter, longer in summer. Time was elastic, local, political. The horloge embraced that. It didn't force the heavens to obey human rules. It invited humans to watch the heavens and plan accordingly. And here's the kicker, this thing worked. It predicted eclipses. It tracked planetary alignments. It didn't just chime, it spoke. In gears and stars and sacred symbols, you reach out and press your hand against the stone wall beneath the clock. It's cold, solid, permanent, and behind it, the mechanism still turns click, tick, clunk, like the heartbeat of a city that's refused to stop for over 600 years. But not everyone appreciated it. Over time, the clock was neglected, misunderstood, even feared. Repairs were botched, pieces stolen. At one point, it was almost dismantled. Historians still argue whether those early years were brilliance or blind luck, whether the horloge was a triumph of science or just a glorified superstition machine. Yet somehow, it lasted, and as the stars wheel overhead and the moon drifts into its next phase, you realize you're standing in the presence of something more than a machine. You're standing inside a story that's still unfolding. But for now, Let's leave the builders behind and take a closer look at the thing they made, because this clock, it's not just a clock. It's a map of the cosmos, rendered in brass. The mechanism hums behind the wall, hidden in shadow and wood. But on the front, it's a riot of curves, colors, and cosmic choreography. You're not just looking at a clock, you're looking at the medieval universe laid bare, with all its mystery, math, and meaningful glances from anthropomorphic moons. Start at the center of the astronomical dial, because that's the brain of this celestial beast. There, the Earth sits immovable, unbothered by Copernicus and his future hot takes. Everything else, the sun, the moon, the stars, circles around it. This is a geocentric stage play, and Earth is the dramatic lead. Obviously, around the Earth is a background painted in blue, reds, and black day, dusk, dawn, and night. That's not just aesthetic flair, it's a 24-hour ring showing what part of the sky you're in. And more surprisingly, it still keeps accurate Prague time today. Try getting your iPhone to do that after 6 centuries. Now you see the golden hand sweeping its arc across the outer ring. That hand doesn't just tell time, it tells 3 kinds of time: Old Bohemian time, Babylonian time, modern Central European time. And somehow, it doesn't catch fire. You squint up at the zodiac ring, which rotates independently. It shows where the sun is within the astrological calendar, a crucial piece for a medieval society where medicine, farming, and don't marry a Leo were all taken very seriously. Here's the sensory detail you didn't know you needed on a clear afternoon. The sunlight bounces off the gold accents and hits the cobblestones below in flickering patterns, like reflections from an ancient disco ball. The whole face shimmers. Kids gawk. Tourists accidentally walk into poles while filming. Then there's the moon sphere, a tiny orb that rotates and changes color to show lunar phases. It's shockingly accurate, and tiny you, standing below, can track the moon's cycle just by watching this little mechanical marble do its thing. But here's where things get deliciously nerdy. The horloge doesn't just show astronomy, it also shows astrology, because in the 15th century, those weren't separate. Your doctor consulted the stars before bleeding you. Your king scheduled wars around Mercury's moods. And this clock, it was like a medieval horoscope machine. Each zodiac sign marks not just the sun's position, but key events, harvest times, festival days, even political alignments. Think of it as the universe's calendar, made out of brass and very judgmental lions. And speaking of calendars, below the main dial is the calendar plate, added by Joseph Manis in 1866. It's a colorful circle, painted with rural scenes, saints' days, and the 12 months, wheat harvesting for July, snow shoveling for January. Each month has a vibe. All of them look exhausting. But wait, what's this? You look up and see a skeleton. Yup, that's Death, pulling a cord and ringing a bell every hour. His hollow eyes and bony grin say, "Time's ticking, sweetie." And next to him, Vanity, Admiration, the miser, and a Turk, each animated puppet symbolizing sins, values, or just general vibes. The message: life is short. Repent, and maybe stop admiring your own reflection so much. Then the apostles appear, Small wooden figures that glide past two windows, raising their hands in slow benediction. Each hour, they parade out in a sort of holy conga line, then disappear. It's part spiritual ritual, part puppet show. Kids love it. Adults pretend not to. And yes, the rooster crows every hour. A little automaton that flaps its wings and lets out a mechanical cock-a-doodle-doo, as if the whole clock just woke up from a nap and wants to let you know. But here's a fringe tidbit. Some believe the clock was originally designed to perform astrological calculations so complex. It bordered on magical, like predicting the end times magical. Legend has it that the horloge is cursed, and that if it ever stops working completely, terrible things will follow, which of course, it has stopped working several times. The biggest failure, World War II. In 1945, during the Prague Uprising, Nazi forces shelled the old town hall. Fire tore through the building. The horloge's wooden components burned. The calendar plate shattered, and people thought it was lost forever. And yet Prague survived, and the clock, it was rebuilt, because even war couldn't kill this thing. It's the clock equivalent of your grandma's cast iron skillet, burned, battered, but still ticking. In that rebuild, it was no small feat. Craftsmen painstakingly recreated the sculptures. Mechanics refurbished the gears. Historians dug through dusty records to understand how each dial should move. Think of it like clock CPR, but with more Latin. And here's where things get quietly emotional. When the horloge chimed again after the war, people cried. Grown men, war-hardened and tired, stood in the square and wept as the skeleton rang his little bell and the apostles made their slow return, because in that moment, the city knew it had survived. The machine had endured. Time had gone on. Historians still argue whether the horloge is more a work of art or an instrument of science, whether it's a reflection of medieval genius or just a very lucky fluke of engineering, whether it's telling you what time it is or reminding you how little time you actually have. But standing there, under its golden shimmer, you don't care. You're wrapped in its tick-tock trance, caught between heaven and earth, science and superstition. And as the skeleton lifts his hourglass again, you can't help but wonder, what else can this ancient machine see that we can't? You stay rooted there in Old Town Square, hypnotized, while the bells fade and the tourists shuffle off. But inside the tower beyond the statues, behind the dials, there's a more secret theater playing out. You're ready now to climb inside the belly of the beast, to see what makes this ancient machine tick. And spoiler alert, it's not magic. It's math. Old, squeaky, medieval math. You push open a heavy wooden door and step into the clock tower's interior. It's dim. The air smells of cold metal, machine oil, and centuries of dust. You hear the steady creak of wood beams underfoot and the faraway clatter of gears, like the world's slowest drumline. Ahead, iron shafts spin, wooden drums roll up chords like sleepy yo-yos. Brass gears the size of shields turn steadily, each tooth fitting into the next like a puzzle too big for one lifetime. You've entered the mechanism room, and this place, it's a tribute to obsessive craftsmanship. No digital screens, no power cords, just weights, wheels, levers, and gravity. Lots of gravity. Here's how it works. The entire horloge runs on falling weights. Every day, Someone has to wind the clock by cranking those weights back up to the top. If they don't, everything stops. Apostles go on strike. Skeleton takes a nap. The moon just freezes in place. You see 3 major mechanisms here, each controlling a different part of the show. The time mechanism. This is the core. It turns the 24-hour dial and keeps Prague time chugging along, just like it did in 1410. You'd think something this old would lag, but nope, it's surprisingly punctual. The astronomical mechanism. This one does the sky math. It calculates the sun's path, the moon's phase, and the zodiac's position. Basically, it's a medieval space app, the Apostles' mechanism. This is the flare. Cams and levers push open the little doors, rotate the figures, make the rooster crow, and generally provide all the drama you saw outside. All 3 are synced. If one stops, they all stop. Like an old rock band, everyone needs to hit their cue, or the song falls apart. You crouch beside a particularly large gear. It's cold, almost greasy to the touch. Every tooth is worn, but not broken. They've been replaced over the years, but always to the same exact specifications. This is mechanical memory. The machine remembers how to move across centuries through the shapes of its pieces. Awe creeps in. You think of all the hands that have worked on this: blacksmiths, engineers, horologists, wartime mechanics, post-war restorers. That one apprentice who probably sneezed into the wrong gear and got yelled at in Latin. Every gear, every crank, carries fingerprints from people long gone. And then a strange thing happens. You hear the ticking, slow, steady, rhythmic. It's not loud, but in the quiet of the tower, it feels massive, like you're inside a heartbeat. You lean against a beam and listen, your own breath syncing with the cadence. Tick, tick, tick. That's when you realize this machine has outlived kingdoms. Monarchs have died, empires risen and fallen, revolutions sparked and fizzled, but the horloge, it just kept ticking. Here's a quirky bit. One restorer swears he once caught the clock correcting itself, adjusting for a slight drift in the astronomical dial during a leap year. There's no sensor, no computer, just good old-fashioned design. You half expect it to wink at you, but there's also fear in this room, a kind of reverence, because this mechanism is so complex, so delicate, that modern horologists admit they don't entirely understand it. Sure, they can maintain it, but rebuild it from scratch? Maybe not. It's like giving a Rubik's Cube to a cat and hoping for a Nobel Prize. Historians still argue whether Mikuláš and Schindel could have foreseen the machine lasting this long, whether they understood the full implications of what they built, or if it was just a fancy civic project that got wildly out of hand. You touch the edge of a gear and wonder if the clock could speak. What would it say? What did it see during the 30 Years' War? When Nazi boots marched through Prague, when tourists with selfie sticks stormed the square. And maybe the weirdest part, the machine doesn't care. It doesn't react. It just turns, always turns. The stars change, empires fall, but time, true time, is mechanical, relentless, neutral. Emotion sneaks in around the edges. There's something humbling about being in the presence of a thing that's been so consistent, so patient. You feel small, not in a scary way, but in a peaceful one, like being reminded that the world is ancient and vast, and that you're lucky just to witness this tiny piece of it ticking away. Now here's something cool. The horloge wasn't just a local wonder. Word of it spread. Travelers from all over Europe came to see the magic machine in Prague. Some tried to replicate it. Most failed. Even today, it's considered one of the most complex and accurate medieval clocks ever built. And that's before they had calculus or coffee. You begin to descend the spiral staircase out of the tower. Behind you, the gears grind gently, resetting for the next hour. The figures are locked in place, waiting for their cue. The skeleton stands ready, his bell string taut. The universe, as represented by this old marvel, is ready to perform again. But before you leave, one last thing catches your eye, a note, scratched into the wood by some long-gone clock keeper. It says, roughly translated, if the machine is true, so too are the stars. You pause, because up next, we're about to see just how well this ancient machine still predicts modern celestial events. And honestly, it's going to blow your mind. You step back out into the square, blinking under a soft dusk. The sky above Prague has turned a kind of bruised lavender, that twilight moment when the day exhales and the night isn't quite sure what to do with itself. You tilt your head and look at the horloge again, but this time, you're not just a tourist. Now, you're a witness. You've seen the gears behind the grin, and now it's time to ask the big question. How does this 600-plus-year-old clock still predict celestial events that even modern astronomers track? Let's start with the basics. The horloge isn't just telling time, it's modeling the entire medieval sky. That means tracking the sun's position through the zodiac, showing where the moon is in its cycle, and even approximating things like equinoxes and solstices. You take out your phone, open a moon phase app. It tells you the moon is in its third quarter. You glance back at the moon dial on the horloge. It's showing the same thing. Perfectly. No Bluetooth, no updates, just brass and brain power from the 1400s. So how is that even possible? Here's the big reveal. The horloge uses a mechanical model of the solar system based on Ptolemaic astronomy back in the 15th century. The prevailing belief was that the Earth was the center of the universe. Mikuláš and Schindel didn't know the planets orbit the sun, but what they did know, to an eerie degree of accuracy, was how the sun and moon appeared to move through our sky. They designed epicyclic gear trains, where one gear rides on another like a piggyback. That mimics the retrograde motion of planets, those little loops you see in the sky that confused ancient stargazers for centuries. Historians still argue whether Schindel truly grasped how astronomically precise his system was, or if he just got very lucky with the math. Either way, it worked. It still works. You follow the zodiac ring with your eyes. Right now, the sun symbol sits near Gemini. That's because, from Earth's perspective, the sun really is in that section of the sky today. The clock knew that. Before NASA, before telescopes, before pizza delivery, it knew. Here's a quirky detail for you. The zodiac ring doesn't move in a circle like a clock hand. It rotates on a tilted axis. Because the ecliptic plane, the sun's path across the sky, is tilted relative to Earth's equator. The horloge accounts for that. In the 1400s, let that sink in. You wander to a nearby cafe and sit under a striped umbrella, still watching the clock. You overhear a local guide telling tourists that the horloge even models unequal hours. Wait, what? Yep. In addition to modern 60-minute hours, it also displays old Bohemian time, where the day is split into 12 hours of daylight and 12 of night regardless of season. That means the length of an hour changes throughout the year. In winter, an hour might be 45 minutes. In summer, 75. And this clock, it adjusts automatically. Take that daylight savings. And yes, it even nods to sidereal time, astronomical time, measured by the stars. Not the sun, while not its main function. The layout of the horloge style gives scholars clues about how medieval people measured the heavens beyond just the day and night cycle. But here's where things get spooky good. In 2023, a group of European astronomers ran a simulation to test the horloge's celestial predictions against modern ephemerides. Those are super accurate charts of star and planet positions. Guess what? The horloge's moon phase display was accurate to within a single day. That's on par with some early digital calculators, all from a mechanism powered by weights and gears. You sip your coffee, it's good, but not as strong as this realization. The horloge isn't outdated. It's just non-electronic. It's the analog iPhone of the 15th century. And somehow, it still gets updates from the universe. That's where the emotional moment creeps in. You start to feel it, that tingling awe in your chest, because it's one thing to marvel at old tech. It's another to realize that something ancient is still speaking truth today. This old, clunky, beautiful clock is still having a conversation with the cosmos, and you get to overhear it. It's like watching an elderly person solve calculus in their sleep. The lines on their face might fool you, but inside, there's genius, precision, fire. You lean back in your chair and glance up as the clock begins to chime the hour again. Death pulls his rope. The apostles bless the crowd. The rooster flaps and squeals, and the golden sun pointer keeps on sliding, just a hair, toward Cancer. There's a legend among Prague's clockkeepers that the horloge has a kind of personality, that if you disrespect it, it won't work for you. But if you tend to it gently, it rewards you with uncanny accuracy. Of course, it's not alive, but you're beginning to wonder. Historians still debate whether this type of clock should be called an orrery, a planetarium, or something else entirely. It doesn't match cleanly with any modern category. It's not just a timepiece, or a calendar, or a model of the solar system. It's all of them, and it's something else too. It's a medieval love letter to the stars. You watch the last light fade from the square, the sky now a deep indigo. People drift off to hotels. The street performers pack up, but the horloge keeps ticking, unbothered by bedtime. And as the zodiac ring spins its slow, silent waltz, you realize, if the machine knows where the stars are now, could it also know where they'll be tomorrow? You linger beneath the tower longer than you meant to, neck craned, watching the gilded pointers crawl across the dials. One hand points to the sun's daily arc, another tracks the moon's shift. The zodiac ring inches forward like a patient carousel. You're not just watching time pass, you're watching the future unfold mechanically. Because yes, the horloge doesn't only reflect the present moment, it predicts with shocking accuracy. And it's been doing so for over 600 years. You might wonder, How could a medieval mechanism forecast future celestial events without access to satellites, computers, or even telescopes? Well, here's the trick: the horloge isn't truly forecasting, like a scientist making a weather prediction. It's not calculating future moon phases. It's mirroring a cosmic rhythm that's incredibly stable. The sun rises, the moon waxes and wanes, the constellations circle overhead, and they do it on a near perfect loop. If you build a machine to replicate that loop, and you build it well enough, it doesn't just tell you what's happening now, it shows you what's next. It's like winding up a music box that plays the solar system's greatest hits in the right order forever. You make your way into a tucked away museum annex inside the tower. It smells of pine floors, museum wax, and a hint of dry parchment. A display case holds a copy of Schindell's astronomical tables, the source code of the horloge. The ink is brown and faded. The math is scribbled with a monk's obsessive neatness. Circles, angles, ratios, no flourish, no ego, just function. One table shows moon phases, not just for that year, but for decades ahead. And beside it, a calendar dial, a medieval app interface. Turn it to any day in the future, and the gears shift to show where the moon will be, what constellation the sun aligns with, how many hours of daylight to expect. Now here's a weird but true tidbit back in the 1800s. When the horloge stopped working for a time due to mechanical failure, locals panicked. Why? Because farmers had been using it to plant crops. They trusted its prediction of full moons more than the printed almanacs. Some claimed they couldn't feel the time properly when the clock was down. You glance again at the zodiac ring. Think of modern software simulations. They glitch, they update, but the horloge, if you keep it wound, it just works. There's something comforting, almost therapeutic about that. Historians still argue whether the builders understood how sustainable their gear ratios truly were. Some think Schindel simply aimed to model the sky for a few decades, never imagining it would still be tracking phases and seasons 6 centuries later. Others believe he deliberately encoded the long celestial cycles, lunar synods, solar equinoxes, the slow dance of the ecliptic tilt into every cog. Either way, the result is something close to time travel. Here's the goosebump moment. In 2024, the horloge correctly displayed a solar eclipse, visible across parts of Europe, down to the correct date and sun-moon alignment. The sky darkened. Crowds gathered. Tourists cheered and live-streamed it. Meanwhile, the horloge just ticked calmly forward. It had known about the event all along. Think about that, a machine designed before America was even a concept, accurately displaying the alignment of celestial bodies over half a millennium into the future. You start to feel a strange sensation, like you're standing on the edge of something ancient and invisible, a line drawn not through geography, but through time. You realize the horloge isn't just old, it's reliable, dependable in a way few things ever are. It doesn't care who's president, or what currency is in use, or whether someone misspelled equinox in a blog post. It cares about gears, ratios, gravity, the moon's cycle, and that's it. You run your fingers along a printed replica of the calendar dial. You turn it slowly to April 8th, 2024. The pointer moves with a satisfying click. The moon on the astronomical dial lines up with the sun symbol just as it did in the sky that day. Now consider this. The horloge isn't digital. It doesn't reprogram. It doesn't correct itself via network updates. It has no idea what year it's in. All it knows is movement. One rotation leads to the next, like dominoes of brass and belief. And that, maybe, is what makes it such a miracle. The emotions well up again. You didn't expect to feel this here, beside a creaky tower in a city square. But this isn't about a clock anymore. It's about trust in human creation, about how, even in a chaotic world, someone, somewhere, once cared enough to make something this precise, not for fame or wealth, but because they could, because they looked at the sky and said, I want to understand. You think of Schindel, bent over his parchments in candlelight, mapping a universe he could never touch, of Mikulash, hammering gears by hand with a forge, roaring beside him, of centuries of repairers and watchers, winding the clock daily, listening to its heartbeat, refusing to let it fall silent. And now it's your turn to hear it. The horloge doesn't speak, but it shows. And what it shows with unflinching clarity. When the next full moon will rise, when the sun will dip into Libra, when the earth will tilt just enough to turn summer into fall, and it will continue showing long after we're all gone. You take one last look at the dial, set now to a future date you'll likely never live to see, but it's there, already written, already encoded. The horloge is waiting to show it. When the day comes, what other ancient machine could possibly promise that? And just wait, because next up, we're going to pull the curtain back even farther and find out who almost destroyed the horloge forever and why it's a miracle you're even able to see it today. You return to the square one last time, drawn like a thread to the golden face of the horloge. But this time, your focus isn't on the dials or the stars. It's on the battle scars. Because here's the truth. Most tourists miss this clock shouldn't be here. Not anymore. It came terrifyingly close to destruction multiple times. And each time, someone stepped in, someone fought for it, risked for it, saved it. So tonight, we uncover the near deaths of the horloge and the strange luck that kept it ticking. First, rewind to the early 1600s. The Holy Roman Empire is a pressure cooker of religion and rebellion. Prague is caught in the crossfire. Fires break out. Riots sweep through the streets. And yet, the horloge survives. Why, no one really knows. Some say townspeople physically shielded the tower with their own bodies. Others whisper that a priest stood guard with a crucifix, daring soldiers to destroy God's timepiece. Then fast forward to the 18th century, when scientific fashion shifts. People begin sneering at geocentric models and medieval engineering. The horloge is mocked, seen as outdated, superstitious, even embarrassing. Several city officials propose dismantling it, scrapping the brass for coin. One mayor allegedly called it a relic of fools. But somehow, every proposal fails. Votes stall, budgets collapse, and the horloge endures, quietly ticking while empires rise and fall around it. Then comes the nightmare, May 8th, 1945. The final days of World War II. Prague is in chaos. Nazi forces are retreating. The Czech resistance rises up. German soldiers desperate, cornered, begin setting fires as they flee. A storm of flames erupts across Old Town Square. The horloge tower takes a direct hit. The wooden calendar dial burns to ash. The statues melt. The mechanism warps in the heat. Black smoke pours from the face of the clock like the very soul of the city crying out. You feel the lump form in your throat as you picture it flames licking up the tower, centuries of craftsmanship cracking and collapsing. And here comes your emotionally immersive moment in the wreckage, with bullets still echoing in the alleys. A group of clockmakers and students form a human chain. They pick through the rubble, salvage gears with their bare hands. They bury what they can't save to protect it from looters. One survivor later wrote, "The clock could be rebuilt. Our spirit depended on it." Think about that. In the bloodied dawn of post-war Prague, when people had nothing, no homes, no food, no answers, they still chose to rebuild a clock because time meant something, because continuity meant something, because if the horloge could tick again, maybe they could too. Historians still argue whether the post-war restoration was fully faithful to Schindler's original design. Some say modern mechanics crept in. Others insist it's nearly identical, thanks to old blueprints hidden in the tower walls. Either way, when the horloge ticked again in 1948, thousands gathered in silence, not to cheer, just to listen. You imagine that moment? The soft click of gears, the slow turn of the zodiac, the rooster's cry, once more echoing across the square, and the city exhaled. The horloge had survived the Inquisition, the Habsburgs, Napoleon, Hitler. It had seen horse carts replaced by Teslas, candles replaced by neon, and yet it still moved, still marked the moon, still showed the hours, still pointed to the stars. Here's your quirky fact for the night in 2002. The horloge was hit again by a massive flood. The Vltava River spilled over its banks. Water seeped into the tower base. Yet again, restorers worked round the clock, pun fully intended to rescue the soaked components. And once again, it rose. And now it's one of the only functioning medieval astronomical clocks still in operation. Tourists come from around the globe. Scientists marvel at its enduring precision, and Prague locals still glance at it out of habit, as if asking it permission to begin their day. You take one last walk around the base, fingers trailing the cool stone. You can almost feel the pulse of the mechanism beneath your feet, a slow, steady heartbeat in brass and iron. And here, now, we begin to wind down. The crowds have thinned, the light has cooled. The statues above the dial are motionless in their alcoves. Time, for the moment, feels soft. You sit on a nearby bench and look up at the moon. It's a sliver-waxing crescent. You know this not because of an app, but because the horloge told you so. Quietly, confidently, there's a kind of peace in that. The idea that, even with the world so noisy and unpredictable, some rhythms hold. Some machines still whisper their truths across centuries. You close your eyes. The fan of your breath on your lips feels like wind brushing the tower's face. You hear the faint click of the clock's internals, even from here. Soft now. Let the gears fade. The sun pointer slowly glides through Leo. The moon creeps toward full. Time doesn't race, it flows, just like you, easing into sleep. The horloge will be here in the morning, and tomorrow, and long after that, the story is over. See you tomorrow night. Sweet dreams.